So, Bismillah, we begin with Dua Kumayl. Now, the history of Dua Kumayl, as you can tell, Dua of Kumayl, an attribute to Kumayl. The story behind it is, in fact, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam refers to this Dua as Dua of his Khidr. Al-Khidr is a person before the time of Prophet Musa alayhi salam. Al-Khidr alayhi salam is one of awliya Allah, one of the friends of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has been given special tasks by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The story of Khidr is that he comes from a family of royalty, and he decided to abandon that family of royalty and focus on worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, worshipping God. And one of the things that happens, or the blessings that he's given is whatever land he walks on turns green. And hence he was named Khidr. And he's from the time of Prophet Musa alayhi salam. The story is about how he drank from this well that existed, and this well is essentially, if you drink from that water, you'll live until the day of judgment. So he drank from that water, and some say he lived 600 years or a few hundred years before Prophet Musa. So he's very old. So Khidr alayhi salam, this is a dua that Amir al-Mu'mineen describes as the dua of Khidr. And the language of Khidr is different. So Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam gave this dua in the form of Arabic and in the eloquence of Amir al-Mu'mineen. That's why when someone looks at Dua Kumayl and they read the words, they say this is someone that has an understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that no ordinary human can reach. The way that he describes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the way that he speaks towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, everything that's happening in this dua is something beyond a natural or beyond an ordinary human. This is someone that's highly revered or highly elevated and someone special to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the origin of the story is mentioned in the book of Alam al-Majlisi. He says once Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam was sitting in the mosque in Basra in Iraq, and it was the time of the 15th of Sha'ban. 15th of Sha'ban is during Amir al-Mu'mineen's time, but 15th Sha'ban is revered for what reason now? Wuladat Imam al-Mahdi Adilullah ta'ala for Ajr. He's born 15th of Sha'ban 255. Amir al-Mu'mineen was sitting down on that night in Basra, in the mosque in Basra in Iraq, on the 15th of Sha'ban. And he begins to mention whoever keeps awake, stays awake on this night, and he devotes his nights in reciting the dua of Khidr alayhi salam, undoubtedly the person's supplication will be responded to and granted. And when we were reading the dua, Allahumma ighfir kulla dhanbin adnabtu, oh Allah, forgive every sin that I've committed. And this is just one of those lines. Etc. Yeah, exactly. So the dua is full of, we're asking a lot from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To us it seems we're asking you so much. Subhanahu wa ta'ala is nothing. It's nothing. Here Amir al-Mu'mineen says, whoever stays on the 15th of Sha'ban, spends that night awake in worship, recites this dua, their dua is responded to and is granted. So the Kumayl was sitting in that mosque and he heard this. So they go home, they go their own way, they finish from the masjid. Middle of the night, Amir al-Mu'mineen, he's a knock on his door. It's the middle of the night. How did Kumayl know that he's going to be awake? It's 50th of Sha'ban, he's here to spend that night in worship. So he knows Amir al-Mu'mineen is awake. So he goes, knocks on the door, Amir al-Mu'mineen, he tells him, he's like, come in, how can I help? He says, I want the dua of Khidr. You mentioned it in the mosque. This is the 15th of Sha'ban. I want that dua. He tells him, come inside and begin to write. And he taught him Dua Kumayl, or as we now know it as Dua Kumayl. He taught him the dua of Khidr alayhi salam. He told him, write it down. And he wrote it down, and it's reached us today. Then he advised Kumayl. He says, recite this dua every Thursday night. And if you can't, at least once a month. And if you can't, at least once a year. So that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may protect you from the evils of the enemies and the plots of the impostors. And then he says, oh Kumayl, from your relationship towards me, I grant this dua. So at least once a year, bare minimum, once a year. We just did it now. Bare minimum, once a year. There's another hadith I think I heard from the scholars as well. At least once in your life. Read it. So when it comes to Dua Kumayl, it begins with Allahumma, the first one. where he says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, which is the first, where he says, Allahumma inni as'aluka bi rahmatika allati wasi'at kulla shay. Says, Ya Allah, I'm asking you by your mercy which embraces all things. We begin to see the etiquette of starting a dua is by calling onto God. Allahumma means Ya Allah. It's a different form, but it comes from Ya Allah, oh God. Ya Allah, I ask you by your mercy which embraces all things. Inshallah, next week we'll delve into it. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. وصلي يا ربي على محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين.